Return the car empty. Done. Talking to my grandmother earlier today reminded me of this story from a number of years ago. I live in Sydney and used to fly up to the Gold Coast 3 or 4 times a year to check on my grandmother. The whole family was in Sydney, so someone would usually pop up once each month to help her out. Anyway, I would always rent a car from Hertz when I arrived. At the time they offered a prepaid fuel option where you would pay an amount and not need to refuel before return. It was usually less than you would pay at the local service station, so I usually took this option. As I picked up the keys to this shiny new manual Toyota Corolla, the woman said to me, "So you have the prepaid fuel. Just bring it back empty." After a few days of relaxing by the beach, I ran a few errands for my grandmother in the morning. Before my 1500 flight, when the fuel light comes on and the words of Hertz staff ring in my ear, "Bring it back empty." Not wanting to push it, I pulled into 7-Eleven and put 2 liters in and went on my way. The light didn't extinguish, but with the distance I needed to cover, I figured I'd be safe. About 1300. My grandmother is pushing me out the door, telling me to catch my flight, so I make the 6 kilometers trip to the airport, the whole time anxiously wondering if I'll make it with the fuel remaining. As I was coming up on the airport, I felt the engine splutter, but it was still going. Heading in, it started spluttering more, so much so that I genuinely thought I'd run out mere meters from my destination. As I pulled through the boom gate for rental returns, I put my foot down and got a final burst of acceleration. The car determined to be the little engine that could. My finish line in sight, and the car is going to make it. Until it didn't. The car stalled. With the momentum I had, I pulled it into a spot marked Avis. It only made it about halfway in. I tried in vain to restart it, but it wasn't to be. I got out and pushed the little engine that could into bay 109. I was 11 bays short of the first marked Hertz and was a broken man. My goal so near yet so far. Torment ran through my mind. Did those 11 bays mean I was short of my goal to bring it back empty? I mean, it was in the rental car park after all, and it wasn't uncommon for people to just park in a spot and ignore who owns the spot. I walk into the terminal, carry-on roller bay in one hand, car keys in the other, and walk up to rental returns. "Can I help you?" the same young woman asks as I walk up to her, returning a car. I said. She takes the paperwork and asks where I had parked it. Bay 109. "It says Avis," I respond. Her not looking up, she shrugs and talks into the radio on the counter. "Return 109 inches. Finally she says, "Did you fill it up?" I say no, and she asks roughly how much is left. "None," I say. "Oh, so the petrol light is on." "No worries," she says. "No," I say. "I mean, it ran out of fuel as I drove in. I had to push it into the parking spot." The helpful woman gives me a blank stare for a full 10 seconds. "Wait, you let it run out? You said return it empty, so I accepted your challenge." "Seems I win," I said with a mixture of pride and embarrassment. The staff member turns to her colleague, points at me and says, "Prepaid fuel," and he says it ran out in the car park. The guy looks at me with a smirk and says, "Really? Well, it wouldn't start back up." I reply as someone comes in from outside to get the keys. "It's out of fuel," the woman says. "That's okay, I'll run it up to Shell after I've washed it," he replies. Both terminal staff look at him as the woman, looking at me, says, "No." The customer says he had to push it into the spot. Cue the largest eyes I've ever seen. "I have to see this." He walks out with me and the guy from behind the counter following behind. Opens the car and tries to start it. It's cranking but won't turn over as all 3 of us burst out laughing. "I've never had one fully out before," he says when I tell him. "The woman in there told me bring it back empty," as I walk inside, laughing to check my bags. And they were so surprised, they forgot to get angry. Love this story. I've always felt the urge to do the same thing with one of these rental cars. I worked for Hertz when they were still offering this deal. In my 3 years there, the closest anyone got to matching your greatness was a gold member that left a Mazda 3 so low that I ran out of gas 2 blocks short of the gas station that was 4 blocks away. Good job. I used to drive a 1969 VW Beetle, which I more than once successfully ran out of gas approaching the pump. Doing that with a rental car that you don't know really well requires dedication and skill. Well done. So you have the prepaid fuel. Just bring it back empty. Op. Challenge accepted. I've never had one fully out before. Op. Mission accomplished. As much as they charge for fuel, this is the right response. Challenge complete. You are a god. Bravo. Once I was driving Uber near Disneyland, in California. Picked up a woman and her teen daughter. As mom was chatting, she asked how my day has been. I answered, "It's been swell. All my passengers have been friendly and courteous." Without hesitation, teen looks up from her phone and said, "Challenge accepted." We all got a chuckle from that. I used the prepay option once. I returned it maybe half full, and got a bill for over $100 in gas alone. They charged me for filling up the entire tank regardless of how much was actually left in it. Never again. Good on you. I bet that event resulted in a re-education session for the desk clerks. Though, running out of gas that way is a really good way to do serious damage to the fuel injection system. I almost totaled a diesel letting it run dry trying to find a station that carried it. And modern gasoline engines are even touchier about getting air in the system. On an old US radio show called Car Talk, the hosts regularly commented about trying to return loaner cars as low as possible, and every once in a while about misjudging and the resulting consequences. And thus a legend was born among the rental workers about the one that actually did it. Why did you capitalize these? As I pulled through the boom gate for rental returns, I put my foot down and got a final burst of acceleration. The car determined to be the little engine that could. My finish line in sight and the car is going to make it. Until it didn't. The car stalled. With the momentum I had, I pulled it into a spot marked Avis. For the glory of Avis. Sorry. Couldn't resist lol. I think in the States they usually tell you to fill it back up to whatever the level was at when you got it. I always get so irritated to be giving them gas when I bring it back. I've managed to get it almost empty several times, but this is something I strive for. This by far the best and clearest example of malicious compliance I have read. Literal lolled with the challenge accepted. I win. Thank you. We once did something similar. When we got the car, it had less than a quarter tank. So they told us, don't worry about filling up before you bring it back. We'll count it as going out empty. We ran into really bad traffic on the way back to the rental company and the fuel light had been on for 20 minutes of driving before we pulled in at the rental office. I was terrified that we were going to run out of gas on the 401 in Toronto, and miss our flight home. Legend! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! The truth hurts. I'm not into it. Unpopular opinion. This isn't good for the car, nor were they asking anything unreasonable of you. Just seems like you wanted to be a dick for dick's sake. I've returned M with the fuel light on plenty of occasions. But man, running out of gas in the lot. Boss move. If it was a manual, you could just drive it into the bay using the starter motor.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.